we will keep this promise to the American people. If you like your doctor, you will be able to keep your doctor, period. If you like your health care plan, you will be able to keep your health care plan, period.
This is the most transparent administration in history. Not even a smidgen of corruption.
Fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. What difference at this point does it make?
If you got a business, you didn't build that.
Welcome to the face. Welcome to the face of the new democracy. Don't expect just to make a mistake. We're paying off election debts to those who will take. Attorney General's lying even while
it's time to hear the truth about America's biggest challenges. You're listening to America Off the Rails with your host, Rick Robinson.
Good afternoon, Philadelphia. This is Rick Robinson. I'm the host of America Off the Rails. Before I bring over the guest co-host and the guest we have with us today, I just want to give a special shout-out to the Dirty Uncles for providing the intro and the outro and the bumpers that you hear throughout this show. That is a very good song of theirs. If you've heard it and not sure where to find it, you can go to their SoundCloud page, and actually you have the option to purchase it there. So I would encourage you to do so. Now, this evening, of course, this will be a slightly different show than the other 4 nights out of the week. I actually do have a co-host with me because the day job on Mondays officially sucks. So it makes things a little bit easier to have Mr. Jared Day, co-host and producer of Red Nation Rising Radio, joining me. Good evening, Jared. How are you?
I am good, sir. How are you doing this evening?
I am doing all right. It's actually been a pretty interesting day. For those of you who may not know, of course, if you're not following me on Twitter, you probably don't. We have Dr. Randy Arrrington coming on with us here in just a minute. Before we get to that, though, Jared, I want to go ahead and give you a chance to kind of give folks a heads up as to what you have going on Red Nation Rising on Thursday, because that is a pretty important interview for you guys as well. And actually, I'll be sitting in for that one, so I have to admit I am slightly nervous. Just saying.
Well, we certainly appreciate that, Rick. And yeah, it is a big interview. I hope people will come out and listen and possibly get in the chat room, send some questions to be answered by J.D. Winteregg. He's running against John Boehner in Ohio's 8th district, and it's a huge, David versus Goliath. We've already seen that it can happen. So if he gets grassroots behind him across the country, even if he doesn't match or even come up with half the money that the orange drunken speaker has, he can still prevail, I believe.
Well, I definitely hope so, because at this point we have got to get rid of Boehner, or as I like to call him, Boner. Now, before we bring Dr. Arrrington on, do want to give a quick shout-out to the affiliates, AMFM247.com, Red State Talk Radio, and, of course, K98 Talk, our home station, as well as the home network, the Spark Radio Network. And a quick shout-out to an affiliate that is considering running the show, in case you're listening. High Point Radio out of New Jersey is actually considering picking up the show. So if anybody who's listening, send them an email. Let them know it's a good idea. Just saying. All right, so without further ado, we do have Dr. Randy Arrrington on the line with us today. He'll be joining us for the duration of the show. Good afternoon, Dr. Arrrington. How are you?
Hey, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are out there in America, and I hope your listeners are going to get a little bit of education tonight during our intellectual banter.
I certainly hope so as well, although we do have a pretty high caliber group of folks that like to listen. So, but I'm sure you'll bring a lot to the table. I mean, it's the first time I've had anybody with a PhD on the show. I definitely can honestly say I don't have one of those. So. Now you sent me quite a few links. I actually have to admit, because of all the prep time, I've only had the ability to peruse a few of them. Since at this point I'm going to assume that some of our listeners don't know who you are, why don't you take a few minutes, go ahead and bring them up to speed on who you are, what it is that you do, and how they can find you.
Well, Randy Arrrington on Twitter. I guess it's actually Kerosene Cowboy or Randy Arrrington on Facebook. And I was a career naval aviator. I flew several different attack jets in the Navy during my career, both active duty and reserve, and I retired as a full commander. I also flew for the Department of Homeland Security, although we called it United States Customs Air Operations in the beginning. And then 2002, 2003, they changed the name to Customs and Border Protection in the Department of Homeland Security. I did that for 21 and a half years. ended up as the deputy director of air operations, air and marine operations, out of San Diego, and retired from there. Since that time, I have been training U.S. Air Force pilots and other pilots from around the globe to fly the King Air 350 aircraft. I train the Air Force guys to fly that airplane in the war in Afghanistan and the war in Iraq. I also am an author. Obviously, I write scholarly articles. I write the Kerosene Cowboys series of novels, and the first one became a movie. They changed the name from Kerosene Cowboys to Red Sky, but that came out. I guess it was a year and a half ago that it came out. So that movie is out there. And now I'm part of the good people, the good folks at Red Nation Rising, who are this grassroots organization created by James Lystack, basically out of a Twitter account. And now we're huge. They're huge, and I'm glad to be honored to be a part of that, because we need to light a fire underneath the conservatives and stop being playing nice with everybody, because our nation is in dire jeopardy right now. We have to save it.
You know, it's interesting that you bring that up, because I happen to agree with you. I actually, especially after this last round of everything that went on with TPA, TPP, and the fact that it seems like we have the folks that are claiming to be conservative at the Capitol basically selling themselves on street corners like cheap hookers. I really, at this point, I'm not sure how it is that we can get people awake enough to realize just how bad everything is. Which is one reason why I've myself have become affiliated with folks like Red Nation Rising and a few other places, because I figure the more of us that stand together, the more likely we are to get folks' attention, which is another reason why when you had mentioned that you would like to come on the show, I can't think of anybody better. Pardon me, I have a rescue dog that likes to hang out with me in the studio when I'm doing shows, and she's like having a scratch fit right now. But anyway, Jared, did you have anything that you want to add to this so far? Any questions for Dr. Arrrington?
No questions. I'm really happy that Dr. Arrrington has come on over to K98, and he's going to be doing some more radio, because he is very enlightening, I know, to the listeners to the Red Nation Rising show. And, you know, along with his articles, it's great to get his voice on the air with everybody else. And I think it's just another, it just speaks to what you just said about the more of us standing together, unified, the louder our voice and our message, and the more effect we have.
I completely agree. And yeah, actually that was something I was going to mention in a second, so I'm glad you brought that up. For those of you who don't know, because we haven't officially announced it yet, because I'm not exactly sure when it's going to start, Dr. Arrrington is actually going to be coming over here to K98 Talk once we get things ironed out, and he'll actually be doing a show. I believe, if memory serves, I think you're going to be doing it with Jared's current co-host, Lou. Is that correct?
She has talked me into that, and of course she's wonderful. She's got a wonderful voice of reason and principle. You know, she's a very good conservative, even though she graduated from Meredith College there in North Carolina. She is a very principled conservative, and we need her voice as well as everybody else that is involved in what's going on. The interesting thing you just talked about is that how do we get people involved? The problem with that is the United States always is, the majority of the people in the country, vast majority, are always in this sleeping giant syndrome. And that's a good thing. They're focused on what they're doing individually with their little individual umbrella of freedom and pursuing life, liberty, and happiness. And that's a good thing. We don't want to have too many political activists in the United States, because then you have too many political activists to become an unstable country, politically speaking. So we will have to wake these people up. There are things that have to occur for that to actually happen. 911 woke people up for a little while. I remember when 911 happened, I was teaching at Tulane University, and that happened. I actually flew the Secret Service people in Washington, in New Orleans, up to Barksdale Air Force Base to join Air Force One and President Bush's security team up there that actual day. And that night I was teaching at the university. I told the students at Tulane, look, we're not going to have class tonight because of what's happened in the United States with this terrorism attack. But I will stay here if you want to stay and talk. And every student stayed, and we had a little round robin. I let them, blow off steam and talk about certain things. I never tell them what to think. I always make them think, if you understand that. And they can adopt any side of the political continuum they want to. So we talked about it, and I told them just before I left, here's what you're going to see the next few weeks. You're going to see both sides of the political continuum, the aisle in Congress, come together in sort of a kumbaya and hold hands and sing songs together. And I just want you to know, it's going to be only for a temporary period of time. And then about 3 or 4 weeks after that, we're going to get back to where we have the political activists who are complaining about the government doing whatever it's going to do in response to 9/11. And that's exactly the behavioral dynamic that we saw in the aftermath of 9/11.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up some interesting points there, because I noticed the same thing from my perspective. We had lots of folks that when everything first went off, it was America, best country around, and then all of a sudden everything turned into this whole, and it's just been a shift. And since then, I think it's honestly shifted even further. And I guess my question to you is, with as concerned as you are and as concerned as Jared and I are, where do you think that things started going sideways for us as a country in regards to, we used to have this big regard for the Constitution, everybody's freedoms, and now it just seems like we're more interested in making sure that we don't offend anybody or hurt anybody's feelings. Where do you feel like, because to me it seems like we kind of went sideways a little bit there. So do you feel the same way? And if so, where do you think that actually kind of started for us?
It started when they created the Communist International. Lenin created that in Soviet Russia. It then matriculated around the globe and is now sort of centered in Columbia University. And you have the United States is being deluged with political correctness, which is just a clandestine tactic of cultural Marxism. I write several articles about that. My doctoral thesis was on that. And what the cultural Marxists want to do is create uniformity of opinion, and the uniformity of opinion they want to create is that you hate the United States of America. You hate capitalism. You hate football and basketball and baseball. You hate everything that is Western. Anything that's Western in the cultural Marxist mindset is to be mocked and ridiculed on a constant basis, because they changed Marxism from what Karl Marx envisioned. He envisioned that economics was the primary motivator of the eventual proletariat revolution, which would then engulf the world, and we'd have communist utopia forever and ever. It never happened, and we've had only pseudo-Marxist revolutions that have occurred. And what the cultural Marxists decided, people like Lukács and Marcuse, they decided that it wasn't economics that was the primary motivator of a communist revolution. It was culture. And they decided to engage in this cultural warfare and attack our character and our culture. And they bring in several different entities that are disgruntled, that are marginalized. You name the marginalized group or the radical group, and they are in bed with these people. Some of them don't even know it. Some of them are witting accomplices to communist revolution, and some of them are unwitting accomplices to Marxist revolution, because they're so good, they're so adept at making people, blaming somebody for their problems, which is exactly what Hitler and his regime did in Nazi Germany. They blame an enemy, a hobgoblin, which is usually imaginary, and they say to you, you give us the reins of power, all power, and we will exact a just revenge against those, your nemesis, in your favor. And you got a lot of people out there that have sort of a loser parasite mentality, and I say that with all honesty, because that's true, that are easily bought off into this type of cultural Marxism. And if you get enough people that will buy this, then you eventually, in the minds of the cultural Marxists, have an unstoppable communist revolution which will spread worldwide. And that's what's happening right now. Cultural Marxism is to blame for the majority of our problems in this country. They changed the names of their affiliation. Democrats, progressives, liberals, you name the term. They're actually communist Marxists. And some people know this, Some of them don't know this. I think I call Mr. Obama an Islamo communist sitting in the White House. He is a Muslim, simultaneously a radical communist as well. So is Mrs. Clinton. She was her mind was raped, if you will, by Saul Alinsky and her professors when she went through school. And she is a communist as well. And we need to make sure that we can ignite a firestorm under our rear ends in this country, even on the left, to make them understand our country may not survive until 2025.
Well, yeah, I mean, you bring up a lot of good points there, and this is coming from someone who actually has a little bit of perspective when it comes to that type of stuff. I actually do a show with a liberal co-host who actually happens to be a fairly young teenager. And the thing that I've noticed, and I don't know if you've noticed it as well, but if you get to the point where you start talking to people that are pretty much about 28 or younger, they're all for socialized medicine, government programs. So what concerns me is when it comes to the youth, I think we are severely losing the battle when it comes to trying to help them understand the difference between what capitalism truly is and what socialism, which is basically just communism light, is. Because they see capitalism as completely evil now because of the fact that it has been kind of twisted in this country. So they look at socialism, which will at some point most likely lead to some form of communism, as a saving political entity. And it just seems like no matter how many times I try to point out that in socialist countries you don't have the type of freedoms that we have here. And one of the reasons the programs work for all of these other countries that everybody wants to talk about is the fact that the populations are so much smaller and they have strict immigration controls and immigration laws, and it's hard to get into those countries because of the fact that they have all of these programs that they have to pay for. And they have all of these insanely high taxes that are paying for all of this stuff. And it just seems like no matter how hard I try, I lose the argument with anybody below about the age of 28. And that concerns me.
Well, you said something that's very, very astute, that socialism is the transition stage to full-blown communism. It takes, if you know anything about Marxist theory, it takes about 2 generations, so let's say 40 years, to human re-engineer the population. This is something that Stalin was attempting when he had the reins of power in the Soviet Union. But it takes about 40 years to human re-engineer these re-education camps. You've heard of that term. Re-educate people's minds into accepting communism. Now, let me tell you something about this. Is what I teach my students. Communism only works in 2 places: in a faculty lounge where educated fools dream of having it, and in hell where condemned fools already have it. That's the only 2 places communism will work. Trust me on this one subject.
That's a pretty good analogy there, because I tend to agree with you. It looks great on paper. It fails in practice. And the thing about it is, and that's the thing that I don't think I've ever been able to get anybody to understand, they're like, well, socialism will work. And they don't understand that socialism is the precursor to communism. The only real difference between socialism and communism is one is done through legislation, the other is typically done through violence, and eventually they both become the same thing. And no matter how many times I try to explain that to people, all I get told is that I'm an idiot and I don't know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, okay, well, this conversation's pretty much over.
Well, let me analytically tell you something about the United States and our electorate. Viewed from a political perspective, there are 3 kinds of people in American society today. There are those people who retain their individual freedom and they know that they're free. Then you have sort of a middle stratum. You have those people who do not retain individual freedom, and they know fully aware that they are slaves and that they're not free. And then you have those people who do not retain individual freedom in our society, but they don't know that. They don't know that in reality they are slaves and they are not free. And let me tell you something, Rick, this last group of people is the most dangerous group in our society because, to use a biblical phrase, they know not what they do.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the crux of it, isn't it? We have one of the most intellectually educated societies, but at the same time, they're the dumbest common sense people ever. I mean, it really is.
Well, it really depends on where you get your education, what professors are teaching you. And, I wrote this latest article. I don't know if you read it, but it's called the Invisible Primary, where I basically talk about the United States and how the campaign trail is going to unfold during this next, till November of 2016. And people think that we have a choice in who we're going to elect. We really don't. There's this thing called invisible primary, where these politicians are basically running for election the next day after they get elected. And this is not just the presidency, but every political office that we have. And that's their overarching goal, is to get reelected. And what they do, they're forced to do because of power, and power corrupts, is to pay more attention to the power brokers, the people that have the money and the influence, than they do their constituents. In reality, the people that are elected and the big donors that give all the money and the people that run the parties, they hate the regular citizens, us in the grassroots, because they're forced every 2 years or 4 years to come to us for our ballot box verdict. We're the jury. We're the ultimate arbiter of power if we use that right. That's what we were taught by John Locke, that the people are the ultimate reservoir of power, but we don't often use it enough. We give it to other individuals who then take advantage of that loan of our power for their advantage and not ours. So that's a big problem in the United States. We want to say that we have a democratic constitutional republic. This is what I teach my students. We don't. We have an oligarchy that self-identifies as a democratic constitutional republic.
You bring up a good point, because I actually, again, like I said, I do a couple of shows here and there that have liberals involved, and that's one of the words they throw around a lot, is that the United States has become an oligarchy. Do you feel that it's always been one and we just told ourselves otherwise, or has it really gotten worse over the last few decades?
It's gotten worse. It's probably started when Wilson was president. He was probably really the first aggressive progressive. I think Teddy Roosevelt was probably involved there too, but more on the right side. You do have lefty progressives and rhino progressives. I call the rhinos liberals who self-identify as Republicans or conservatives, and they really are. I've had several conversations with John McCain, senator in Arizona. He and I flew the same two airplanes in the Navy, him several years before I did. And I used to fly in U.S. Customs airplanes in the border there in Arizona. And we had several conversations, and he was trying to pick my brain. And I knew right away that this guy was all for complete total amnesty based on what we talked about. And I told him, I said, sir, you're completely delusional. And I love him to death as a brother in arms, naval aviator, but I tell him all the time, you need to retire because you have lost it, sir. We always be very respectful, but I'm telling him the truth, kind of like Donald Trump. I'm telling you the truth, and then, of course, I'll have to endure the inevitable consequences. People like Jared and Lou kind of watch my back, and I watch their back as well. And tactical naval aviation call that checking your six, or I've got your six. I'm going to protect you from harm, both visible harm that comes at you and the invisible, unseen harm that comes at you from the rear. That's called protecting your six. And I do that with them, and they've done that with me several times. I appreciate it. As do the Red Nation Rising Patriots, Rick.
No, I mean, yeah, they're really good at that. And that was actually, for once, I finally had the chance to return the favor when Jared was attacked the other day. Speaking of which, I never got a chance to mention this when we were talking about it while I was running everything for the pre-show. But you had mentioned how you had been blocked by that certain individual before you could ever say anything. I was allowed to get at least one sentence into her, and then she blocked me. I politely said, hey, if you've got a problem with one of my hosts, we should probably talk. And then I was blocked when I went back to look. So, yeah.
Well, I was alerted to that. I have other things, other irons in the fire that I'm working with. I can't constantly, be on social media, but my friend and Jared's friend Lou Esposito is the one that alerted me to that, and I immediately went there and saw what all the buzz was about. And it was kind of a heinous attack on Jared. And so I looked her up, and then the next day I found out I was blocked. I didn't even do anything. but that's okay. That doesn't bother me. But let me tell you something about the people of the United States. We retain our individual sovereignty so long as we do exactly what the elites want us to do. And that's a problem. And people don't know this. And we need to start speaking out and letting them get the proper, rational, conservative education that they've been sorely lacking with those knucklehead communist professors. And I ran into them all the time at UCLA, Tulane, wherever I taught. And they pretty much couldn't stand me. You know why? Because I speak the truth like a man, and then I endure the consequences. Truth is power. Never forget that having access to truth and boldly proclaiming it with courage and conviction, that is power. But you're going to be vilified by the left because the truth exposes their deceptions, exposes their hypocrisy, and exposes their lies.
Very good points. And I, too, typically try to basically give folks the truth as much as I can. Sometimes they definitely don't want to hear it, so I have been attacked quite a bit on my own, especially recently as this show and the networks that it's affiliated with seem to be gaining in some pretty big popularity lately. I have been getting a few more emails about how, again, I wear tinfoil hats, don't have any idea what I'm talking about. But it is refreshing, honestly, to hear somebody talk about the fact that we are pretty much an oligarchy anymore. I guess my question, and then we're going to have to take a quick break, my question to you is, are there any steps you can think of off the top of your head that we can do to start reversing that trend?
We need to get more and more people to join Red Nation Rising and listening to you guys. And, you guys are at a different level of communication than the Hannitys and the Limbaughs and the Levins and that sort of thing, but it's a tremendous opportunity to educate people. I never had anybody walk out of my lectures at UCLA or Tulane or LSU, wherever I taught, because I allowed them to, give their point of view without interrupting them. I let them speak. If they want to give me a libertarian argument or a mega leftist argument or speak highly of communism, I allowed them to do that and allowed the other students to hear that and turn to each other during our discussions with me sort of like a moderator and let them discuss it amongst themselves. And that's the way that I guess, endeared myself to my students. I walked into class, I would tell them, look, I'm not going to try to put my brain into your head, students. I'm going to force you to think and use the analytical part of your brain, which a lot of people don't want to use because it takes work. And they appreciated that. So another thing they heard out of me, one of the first things I told them at any university where I taught any class, I love the United States of America, and I want you to love the United States of America too. They don't hear that, Rick. They hear ugliness and hate and why the United States is the worst nation on the planet. And that comes again from these professors who themselves had their minds raped by cultural Marxists.
Very good point, sir. Now, at this point, we are going to take a really quick break. We'll be right back here with Dr. Randy Arrrington, UCLA professor, author of the Kerosene Cowboy series, also naval aviator and medal winner, and also, of course, joined by my usual Monday co-host, Mr. Jared Day, who has been rather quiet today, sir. Are you awake over there?
I tried to interrupt a couple times, but I didn't want to step on anybody.
I'm just messing with you. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to ask Dr. Arrrington who his pick so far is for 2016. You are listening to America Off the Rails. I'm your host, Rick Robinson, joined again by Mr. Jared Day of Red Nation Rising Radio. We'll be back with you here in just a couple minutes.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos radio network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos radio network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000, my heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
Calls, we got a pen and telephone to bypass all your laws. Political correctness will replace the Bill of Rights. Support religious freedom unless you pray to Jesus Christ. The press is in our pocket.
All right, folks, we're back. We're live. This is America Off the Rails. I'm your host, Rick Robinson. All right, and we are still, of course, joined by Mr. Jared Day, my usual Monday co-host, and we, of course, have Dr. Randy Arrrington on the other line, UCLA professor, also naval aviator, and author and actor. So I didn't get a chance to say this earlier, but you are probably one of the only people that I've met that can actually say that they are a jack of all trades, and it actually be a good term for once. Because most of the people that I've met that do several dozen different things, it doesn't ever really seem like it goes well for them. You managed to pull it off.
I've had a lot of help. Trust me. I've stood on the shoulders of giants that have assisted me and been leaders when I needed leaders. And that's what you do as a leader. You not only solve problems and innovate, you make it so that other people around you you assist them in realizing their full potential. And that's what a leader does. It's not selfish, and that's what we need to, you ask what we should do, that's one of the things we need to do is help these people around us realize that they don't need to sit on the sidelines. They can get involved and realize their own destiny or full potential as human beings with a little help from others that are willing to render them help.
Yeah, and actually, I typically end the show the same way almost every night when I can remember it. And that's basically saying pretty much what you just said. It's time to put down the remote, it's time to get off the couch, and it's time to find a way to get involved and get engaged. Now, Before we went to break, I did ask a question. Going to go ahead and come back to that now. With the recent announcement of Walker, which happened today, which annoys me, by the way, because I went through all of these different press clippings trying to find one clean shot of him, even a snippet of his announcement, and couldn't seem to find one. Because there's a few hosts here on Talk that Walker is their guy. That being said, do you have anybody that's a clear front runner for you currently? Have you made a decision at all? Still waiting to see how things shake out, or?
I was fortunate today as I was driving back to my townhouse to be able to listen to Scott Walker, Governor Walker from Wisconsin, talk with Sean Hannity on the radio. I think he's going to be on his TV show tonight, whenever that comes on. Here's my take on that. Not enough has been done on the Republican side, meaning I need to hear more from every one of them. I like every one of them when your choice is a socialist, a communist, I like every one of the people on the right, so I would vote for any of them. For me to endorse somebody, it's way too soon. I would have to hear them go through the stress of just talking to the people and having the debates with one another, looking each other in the eye and asking those questions. That's why Donald Trump is going to be so valuable, is because he has had the courage to bring up these hot button issues, kicking and dragging them, kicking and screaming to the table that none of these candidates really want to discuss, or if they are asked questions about it, they want to get softball questions about it and give softball answers in return. They don't really want to discuss it, but now that it's out there, and he's sort of set the agenda, or at least for the time being, for all the candidates on the campaign trail, they are going to be forced to discuss these various issues, and he will continue to be provocative like he always is, and keep them honest and force them to answer these questions. So I like everybody that's on the right side of the continuum that is announced. There's probably a couple more that may be jumping in. On the left side, of course, I warn everybody about Hillary Clinton. I wrote an article about her called Sociopath or Pathological Liar. What difference at this point does it make? Because she's both. And one of my famous mantra sayings is Hillary and Obama, they are both liars such that they cannot be cured by any known pharmaceutical, psychological, or beads and rattles remedy. They're so far gone, I think sometimes they actually believe their own lies. Now, on the left side, a guy announced the other day that used to be a Republican. It's the former senator from Virginia, James Webb, who was the Secretary of the Navy for a while, and involved in Pentagon operations for a while, was a Marine. He self-identified when he moved into Virginia. He self-identified. He chose to be a Democrat because that's the only way he could get elected. And he did. He served for 1 6-year term in the Senate. I think he actually beat George Allen's son, very close race. But I wish that it would end up being him. I think he's going to be a very strong contender because he's going to tell the truth, and he's not going to back down, the Marine that he is. So I think that's going to be an interesting thing. Right now you've got the invisible primary of these movers and shakers, the power brokers, if you will, these unnamed individuals that we never hear about on the news that control and set the agenda for us in politics. It doesn't really matter who votes on these issues if the issues and the candidates have already been preordained by these power brokers, and that's what they do. They set the agenda for us. They don't care who votes because they put the names on the ballot. So right now, the top names in the invisible primary, of course, for Jeb Bush, because of all the money, he's got more money than God raised, and Hillary Clinton is the alpha female, if you will, on the left. They've been sort of preordained by these power brokers to be the ones that they want to see end up on the ballot for us to choose from, one of those two. So the problem with that is we think our votes in the primary mean something when in actuality our primary votes mean very little.
Very good points, and actually, that was actually one of the things that we talked about on Finding Common Ground on Saturday, which is one of the shows that I still do on Saturday, which is the one where I have a liberal co-host. But yeah, it's basically the whole point of it seems like our votes are basically suggestions, because it all comes down to both the primary college votes and the idea that you've mentioned in that article that you've referenced a couple times today, the invisible primary system, which I actually do believe actually exists. I do actually have a question from the chat that I kind of wanted to touch on. And I'm going to go ahead and read it to you because he's actually rephrased it a couple of times, so I'm just going to read it to you exactly as he posted it. Is there a point where you feel that the rest of us, not progressives, will have had enough, and some sort of either Civil War version 2.0 or maybe an American Spring, if you will, happens?
Yes, I'm going to be in Texas next week, and you know what kicks off in Texas just after I get there next week? Operation Jade Helm. There's a lot of people that are really concerned about that. Because it's been ordered by the commander-in-chief to go into these various local neighborhoods and conduct these operations, sort of in anticipation of civil unrest that I think they understand is coming. Texas, as a state, nation state that they were, the Lone Star State, has just recently recalled their gold supply. Why would they do that, Jared? Do you have an idea why they would recall their gold to be stored in Texas? I'm posing a question to Jared.
Sorry, wasn't with you there.
Sorry, guys. I know. That's my talent. I put people to sleep. Why would Texas recall their gold supply and they want to hold it in Texas?
Because they may have to declare. They may have to secede if there's some sort of martial law on a federal level, or they go in. Right. Texas is a hot zone, just like Southern California near the border. There's a couple other hot zones, and state sovereignty. Texas is, they're number one for a sovereign state. I'm in FEMA 9, and let me tell you, I'm the same as you, Dr. A. I'd be going east real quick if the shit hit the fan. Let me tell you.
I think I predicted this before. I think that Texas, and I consider myself an honorary Texan. I've lived in 4 cities in Texas. My Texas people laugh when I say that, but I think that Texas will be the first, if it comes to this, and it very well may come to this, Texas will be the first to secede, followed pretty shortly thereafter by several different nations who want to protect their individual sovereignty against the encroachment, the unconstitutional, unlawful encroachment by the federal government. And I think Texas will be first. And sort of be the avalanche, leading the avalanche on the way to secession. So yeah, I can see where it would occur. I often ask my Air Force officers, my pilots, when I'm training them, sort of off the side, so what would you do if you received orders to fire on American citizens? What would you do? And the majority of them said they wouldn't do it. I tell them all the time, you do not have to follow an illegal order. You do not. You only have to follow legal orders from those appointed above you. That was the oath you took. And the basic oath you took was to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. This country will never, ever be destroyed or fail because of an external threat. If we ever lose our footing as the United States of America, and I believe we're the shining hill that God talks about in the Bible, we will collapse because of an internal threat, because of heinous treason. And that's the only way I believe that we'll ever lose our footing as a nation. And it's heading that direction right now.
It's interesting. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jared. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Was it Khrushchev or Stalin that said if they were going to take us out, it would be from within, and they would start with education, but they would destroy us from within, not in war. I believe it was Stalin, was it?
Yeah, it was Stalin. That basically came from Lenin and Trotsky and some of the other Bolsheviks. But yeah, that's exactly what he said, and it's so true. And he was the one that actually started the human re-engineering process in the gulags there in the Soviet Union. You need to read the Gulag Archipelago, Solzhenitsyn's book. It's like a 4-volume set, but it's pretty interesting to read about that. And that's what happens in every communist society. They socially re-engineer. First of all, they get all the guns we have 320 million people in the United States right now. We probably have at least that many guns, I would say, in the United States. I got 5 in my house right now.
There's 22 million armed veterans, and there's, I wish I could pull up the stat real quick, but it is a incredibly significant amount of firearms, and you know that the Tree of Liberty will be refreshed with the blood of patriots if they come for those guns. It's going to be real ugly everywhere.
Right. Jefferson said that the Tree of Liberty must be refreshed from time to time with both the blood of patriots and tyrants. And they knew this. The founding fathers were brilliant. They were flawed men, like everyone, like all of us, but they were brilliant. And we need to understand that document that they created in 1787 and they signed into law 1789, the U.S. Constitution, is a brilliant governing apparatus that still governs us in the nuclear age, in the selfie age, whatever you want to call this age we're in right now, brilliantly. If you just adhere to it, revere it, and love it. But the cultural Marxists have tried to convince people through the educational process that it's a living document. It's a flawed document. We need to change it. And some of the recent SCOTUS rulings are ludicrous. And I think that they probably, like the Chicago way, which Mr. Obama's used to, I think they've got some sort of ammunition to get these people to vote for them. Roberts, there's no way he should be voting for this stuff. Absolutely no way that he should be voting for this stuff. I think he's being blackmailed. And if he was sitting here having lunch with me, I would tell him, sir, you're blackmailed.
I'm telling you, Obama's putting that NSA wiretapping and everything else to really good use. There's no other explanation for all the weird crap that's going on right now. He's got dirt on just about everybody at this point, I'm pretty sure.
Definitely on Boehner.
Now to backtrack for just a moment, because something I want to go back to. You'd mentioned the fact that Texas has recalled their gold and all that stuff. Let me tell you something here in Oklahoma that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up when they made the announcement. We had a farm team here for one of the teams in Texas for baseball. The farm team was housed here. This same time last year, Texas made the decision that all of their farm teams were going to be housed internally inside of Texas. So as of now, our farm team has been sold off. It's been recalled to Texas, and now the branch that we have here is now part of the LA Dodgers out of California. That was one of the first things that really made me think that, everybody makes fun of Texas, and they keep saying there's no effing way that they're ever going to secede. I'm telling you, I think they're already working on it, because why else would they have made some of the moves that they've made? There are no longer any farm teams in Texas, and now the gold's been recalled and everything else that's going on. I think we're a lot closer to starting to have a splintered nation than anybody wants to realize.
Last year,
by the way, my father, the true American hero that he was, John William Arrrington, is an Okie as well. He grew up in Veneta and in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I got to visit Oklahoma a lot. It was fun to be there with the Okies. They're wonderful people.
We try.
I hope that's not offensive to call you an Okie, but that's
no. A lot of folks actually considered an offensive term because that's what a lot of the folks during the Depression, when they fled out west, that's what they got called. To me, it's the same general idea as the whole flap with the Confederate flag. That stuff was all reclaimed a long time ago by people that were actually fighting for civil rights, which is another reason why I don't understand all the flap about it, because to me, none of it makes any sense. But that's a topic for another day.
Yep.
I just pulled up an article I wrote a couple years ago. We talk in secession, Wisconsin and one other state. Within the GOP, they wanted to secede. This was 2 years ago. And within the GOP, they decided no, they wouldn't go ahead with that.
Especially after that last election. I think every time I went to whitehouse.gov, there was another petition from another state that was like, we should secede. And then, of course, the president never answered any of them, even though a lot of them met the criteria. In fact, met the criteria that he actually raised the criteria for whether or not the White House was technically required to respond, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. This will be interesting to see how this plays out over the next conspiracy theorist, non-conspiracy theorist, whatever you want to call yourself, whatever you are. It's still going to be interesting to see how this plays out, mainly how people tolerate special forces being, doing operations at night over their cities, and I don't expect anything to happen this year, but I'm interested to see the reaction that people have to this sort of temporary police state in certain regions, Well,
I'll be there monitoring it next week, and I'll be reaching out to you guys and letting you know what I see. And I'm not afraid to step out there in front of those guys. I mean, they're still my brothers in arms, and I'll let you know what is actually happening on the ground. How about that?
Actually, that is a great idea, and I would ask that you do that, because honestly, I'm just now starting to delve into the whole Jade Helm thing, because for the longest time, I didn't really have the time to look into it. The more I look into it, the more freaked out I am by it. It'll be nice to actually have somebody there while it's going on that can tell us whether it's as bad as it sounds, or...
Yeah.
Well, something that we sorely need in the United States is what political scientist Benjamin Barber talked about. It's something he called the strong leadership. And strong leadership in the democratic model of governing is a leadership that leaves the people, the citizens, more capable when the leader finally departs the scene than they were when he arrived or she arrived on the scene. And, what's funny about I wrote this in the article, the peculiar irony of leadership is this: too much personal success means you have actually failed as a leader. You don't want too much personal success. Again, you want to help other human beings realize their full potential. Unfortunately, in the United States, we are sorely lacking these types of patriotic statesmen and true mentors that would mentor the body politic. That we don't have many of those in the United States.
Tomorrow night in Arizona, State Senator Kelly Ward is going to announce her primary against John McCain. We just found out Matt Salmon is not going to primary McCain, so she will be the primary opponent. She was on our radio show. She is quite a stateswoman. As you speak of a person like that, she's a doctor, and I hope that it catches fire nationwide and the country gets behind her, because, as much as you have respect for John McCain as a fellow warrior and aviator, that's good. But as a civilian here in Arizona, he's, for his last 3 or 4 terms, he's really damaged the representation he's had for us and the entire country. So look for this Senator Ward from Arizona as she takes on McCain, and I'm hoping that, if you talk to other friends, you spread the word about her, both of you guys,
Most definitely.
I will do so, yeah.
At this point, McCain's definitely on the short list of got to get him the hell out of office, right there next to Boehner. So,
yeah.
I lost all respect for McCain during his last run-up when he was like, vote for me and I'll fix the fence. And then as soon as he got elected, he's like, yeah, what fence? I'm old. I forgot what I said.
I joined the Gang of 8 instead.
Yeah, pretty much.
Ted Kennedy.
Before we go, I want to do a shout out to my naval aviator friends and basically the Navy in general, because in the United States, the Navy is the tip of the American sword. When America goes into harm's way, it's our Navy that is always the first in and the last out. So bravo Zulu to all of my Navy buddies and naval aviators out there.
Yeah, I was actually just about to give you an opportunity to do that, and I do also want to thank you for your service. I hadn't done that yet, so I definitely want to get that in there. Again, in closing, Dr. A, why don't you let folks know how they can reach you should they wish to correspond with you, and let them know some of the different places where you are publishing writings and all the other things that you've got going on.
What's ironic about whenever I appear on a radio interview or write an article that's published by Jared Red Nation Rising, I get trolls that come out of the woodwork to attack me. And it's just okay. I can, speak the truth and endure the consequences. But, you can find me, Kerosene Cowboy, on Twitter, or Randy Arrington on Facebook. And I'll use my buddy Lou Esposito to run interference for me to make sure that she's got my 6 because I have her 6. It's interesting. The tragedy of life, Rick and Jared, is that we get old too soon and we get wise too late.
Ain't that the truth? Because that's exactly how I am unfortunately starting to feel. All right, Jared, as we bring everything to a close, why don't you remind everybody where they can find you should they wish to correspond with you, and give them a quick recap of what's going on Thursday again. I
am at rebootingliberty.com. You can get me through that site. Everything is linked up there. Daily news coming out every day. And Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, we have J.D. Winteregg joining us. The man that will take down the speaker. So I hope you can come on over Thursday, 8 p.m. in the chat room, and hopefully you get to ask JD some questions.
All right, and actually before that, you'll actually be with me for a half hour. And who are we going to have for a guest during that segment?
Oh, we got Governor John Sununu, right?
Well, yeah, that's late. That's the second half, but I know we've got a guest scheduled for the first half too.
Yeah, we have Eric Carr. He's recently started the Eric Carr Show. He's on YouTube. He also contributes to rebootingliberty.com and his own blog. He's an Army vet, libertarian guy, loves America, great voice. Definitely tune in for that. Meet Eric.
All right, and yeah, the big announcement, which I wanted to say for the last second, just to make sure that everybody had to stay tuned for the whole show. Jared did actually just announce it. We will have Governor John Sununu, author of The Quiet Man, also former chief of staff to George Herbert Walker Bush, will be here with us in the bottom half of the show on Thursday, right before we change gears, and I had the honor to fill in on Red Nation Rising Radio. So Thursday should be a really great night for radio. Not that Tuesday and Wednesday here on K98 Talk aren't any better, but it just does go to show you that for those of you that tune in on a regular basis and you tell everybody about us, you are starting to help us make a difference. I have so many contacts now for interviews and folks that want to do guest spots that I'm having difficulty keeping up with it all. I'm not complaining, so keep doing what you're doing. All right, folks, that's going to do it for this particular episode of America Off the Rails. I will be back with you live tomorrow night. So don't you go anywhere. We'll be right back. Now, here in just a second, you're going to hear a replay of the Right War with Liz and Taylor, and then after that, you will have Red Nation Rising Radio, and then Daniel Stafford with the Stafford Voice. This is America Off the Rails. I'm your host, Rick Robinson. You guys have a great night, and thanks for tuning in.
The Conservative Commandos radio show is expanding to become the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. We are establishing a front line of conservative radio broadcasters and ironclad patriots to declare war against the madness of liberalism and the Obama administration. Are you tired of the disregard for our Constitution? Do you still have faith in the American dream? Are you looking for sensible, smart radio? If so, listen to the Conservative Commandos Radio Network every weekday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Saturdays from 2 to 6 p.m. on WNJC Radio, 1360 on your AM dial, or around the world on the internet at WNJCradio.com. Check out our website, ccrsnetwork.com, for rebroadcasts and network updates. We are the Conservative Commandos Radio Network, where now even more newsmakers go to be heard.